going to be on the Pastoral Theology of Wealth and Poverty. And Dr. Padilla is going to be sharing with us. Just a little bit of information on Dr. Padilla. He's a professor of New Testament and the dean of our Hispanic Ministries program. Previously, he worked for the Center of Urban Mission that we have for 20 years. He's ordained in the PCUSA, and he was a pastor in an inner city church in Manhattan for 7 years. He's born in Puerto Rico, and he came here when he was 12 years old, and he's worked on community organizing and development throughout his life. So he's got a lot of experience with the kinds of issues that are related to this, and seeing it practically worked out in the church and in the community. So it's all welcome here.
Well, I'll speak standing up since I'm a minister. It's a lot easier for me. But I feel like I'm dictating. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you and to share with me a little bit of my experience and how we are to perhaps develop a pastoral theology on wealth and poverty. But let's begin with a word of prayer, shall we? Gracious Lord, we bless your name for the many gifts that you've given unto us, especially the gift of life in Christ Jesus. We thank you that we gathered together as your people to deliberate on your world and socioeconomic conditions, and how we as Christians can answer or confront the poverty around us and confront even the wealth that wants to take over our very souls. We ask now that you be with us and that we bless you in all that we do and say. In Christ's name and for his sake we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, I'm glad that you're here. And I trust that what we'll say will, stimulate some conversations among ourselves as to this issue. Now, and I will do more reading than I usually do because of this is not an area that I'm an expert at, but wanted to share a little bit from my heart and experience. In this brief presentation on pastoral theology of wealth and poverty, I am to reflect on a key question. How should Christians think about poverty and riches? In asking the question, are we not expressing our dissatisfaction or perhaps uneasiness would be a better word with the obvious answer? What do you think Jesus would give as his answer was he here with us this afternoon? How would he answer such a question with us today? I would not dare to be a substitute for Jesus this morning. However, maybe his answer might include a reflection on the words recorded for us in Luke chapter 16. Before quoting that verse, I will remind you that Luke 16 is a chapter focuses on wealth and to a lesser extent poverty. The bookend parables of the dishonest steward, use your wealth to make friends and ensure yourself a better future, and the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man uses his well-earned wealth for his own satisfaction and fails to help the beggar sitting by his gate. Tell us how to use money properly or how not to use money properly. In between the parables, Jesus engages his audience in conversation about money. In that context, as you well know, wealth was considered a blessing. Not too dissimilar than today, by the way. Very recently, I met a colleague, and we proceeded to catch up in each other's lives. And he told me about how his daughter was married. And then he added that the Lord blessed her tremendously in the wedding. And of course, what he meant was that he had married into some wealth. And of course, that's considered a blessing, even among us evangelicals. We justify our wealth, whether as individuals or as a nation, when we say God has blessed America bountifully. Apparently, he has not blessed the Congo abundantly. Now to Jesus' statement in 16:15. Now listen carefully. Jesus says, to the Pharisees, "You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows the heart. For what is exalted among men, wealth," and that's the context, "what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God." Now, that is an easy statement. For we were taught just the opposite, right? Wealth is a blessing. And here is only Jesus saying this. Since the topic today is wealth and poverty, let me cite you another saying of Jesus found in the Gospel of Luke also. Now, this is one of those statements that whenever I read it, there are a few statements of Jesus that I read that I say, "I'm sorry, Jesus, but I have an issue with this one." Jesus said in 6:20, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God." Now, did Jesus really mean that? I mean, for very personal reasons, in my personal experience, does not lend credence to Jesus' statements. I mean, I would not go to Haiti and tell the people how blessed they are to live in shacks. Would you? I mean, it is. It's challenging, is it not? I am reluctant to call the poor blessed, that's for sure. As sure you would. I mean, again, we say God blessed America, and somehow Haiti got left behind. Now, and I would dare say that your views would not be too dissimilar than mine. Hence our desire to, how do we deal with this issue? Personally, I was not born into the affluent lifestyle that I enjoy today. Yes, I consider myself affluent compared to the rest of the world. I was not born into this affluence. I was born into what can be called abject poverty and have spent nearly 50 years fleeing poverty and embracing affluence. Although Jesus said, "One is an abomination and the other one is blessed." Isn't that a bit uneasy? And of course, I would not object to being blessed in one way as opposed to the other, but then Jesus said, "Blessed are you who are poor." So I have to deal with that somehow in my own life. Now, as a North American Christian, I live with the stress of trying to avoid poverty while curtailing the lure of wealth. In other words, I live in this world where, blessed are you poor, which I try to avoid, and this abomination, which is in the sight of God. How do I deal with it? Now, taking Jesus' statements at face value, again, one of the things that I have an issue with some of my New Testament colleagues across the nation, not just here, is how they look at Luke 6:20, "Blessed are you poor," and right away jump to Matthew. I mean, if Luke is inspired, then we have to let Luke speak for himself, right? Isn't that what we say? Therefore, it is an issue. So, take that at face value. How do you, as Christians, ought to think about wealth and poverty? I think most of us already know the answer. And of course, therein lies the origin of discomfort you and I sense as we think about this matter. Such uneasiness, is not new to the uneasy Christian mind. And reflection is as well as Christianity itself on the use of wealth and poverty. It is a question that has been asked for ages. The problem became more acute, in particular as Christianity moved from a predominantly poor, socioeconomically speaking, group of people, as you may recall, early Christians for the first couple of centuries were for the most part poor. Beginning in the 4th century, when the Constantine made Christianity somewhat acceptable, you have the emergence of wealth in the churches, and the churches dealt with that very, very significant. By the way, there's a great book that I read last summer, actually, by Peter Brown, a historian of late antiquity, In the Eye of the Needle, about how the church had to confront when the super wealthy become Christians in the 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries, because the church was predominantly poor. And now they have people like Donald Trump becoming Christian in their world time. Obviously, Donald Trump wasn't around then, although he may argue that. Well, to give you an example of this dialectic of being in favor of poverty and struggling with greed, I quote you from a sermon from the great 4th century preacher, St. Augustine. Now, in this sermon, Augustine begins by bringing to light what Christians and non-Christians understand as avarice or greed. And I quote, "I do not know how it is, but avarice has such an effect of human hearts that all, or to be more truthful and accurate, almost all, wish in words to hold it guilty." In other words, my comment here, Augustine is saying we all agree avarice is guilty, bad. Even if, to continue the quote, in their actions they show that they have a special soft spot for it. Many have uttered many opinions against avarice. Eminent opinions of great weight, all of them quite true. Poets, historians, orators, philosophers, every sort of writer, and every professional person has had so much to say against avarice. Yet, all have a special soft spot for it in their lives. End quote. This is in the 4th century. So you see, this is nothing new. Christians struggling, preaching against avarice while wishing for a little bit more so we can make ends meet. Now, with that Augustinian warning in mind, let us continue mindful, of course, that we who are gathered here this afternoon, when compared with the poor around the world, should be considered as affluent, possessors of great wealth. I will not try to explain the wealth we possess, but focus on how we should interact with the poor around us and around the world. Now, I will not go into detailed analysis of what it is to be poor, nor will I provide overwhelming statistics to demonstrate the growing divide between rich and poor around the world and in our own nation as well. However, I'm sure that you are aware of the recent statement by Oxfam that 62 individuals in this world own more than half the world's population. 62 people have more than half than the rest of the world. Or, another statistic, that 1/3 of the world's population lives on $2 a day. Again, that's very broad. I won't go into any detail. So as we consider our interaction with the poor, bear in mind the question asked by the goats and sheep in Matthew 25. Lord, when did we see you hungry? Now that is also an easy question for us to ponder, isn't it? Many of us would rather answer questions regarding our theological views on the Trinity, on the atonement, on salvation, on our view on sexual ethics. But the question is simply, when did we see you hungry? Now that's an uneasy question because, to be quite honest and fair, and here making a self-confession, I far too often ignore the hungry. If you travel again to Haiti, Santo Domingo, all the places that I go to, I'm constantly bombarded with people begging. Constantly. And how do I make decisions? So when I hear this question, when did I see you hungry? I say, Lord, I did see you, but I was afraid. So, whatever reason to give. But now, the question of seeing Jesus hungry is troubling. Especially as we consider the time of the year we're in. Now, again, I want to focus on, as a pastor, we look at it, and tomorrow is Ash Wednesday. We begin Lent, a time to pray, to read Scripture, a time to reflect on our spiritual discipline, to go closer to Christ, to God. Many of our churches, including mine, I actually wrote a devotion for this next 40 days for our church. Mine included, have set aside daily times for prayers. We'll make a list. A time for fasting, people that will fast during the Lenten season. But as we make this list, I even thought about this. Are we minding the Lord's admonition of His chosen fast? Isaiah 58. Is this not the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover him and not to hide yourself from your own flesh. So, again, that's trouble, right? We could rather forego food for this or that reason and fast, but then this is what God chooses for fast, right? And we feed. So, have you made your lengthy commitments in alignment with God's chosen fast? Is a question I ask myself. Well, let me turn quickly, the time I have left, so I'll ask some questions, to poverty and hunger and how we can do something about it. Because I posed some questions that make you uneasy. Okay, how should Christians respond? As a Christian, how should I respond? Surely I cannot feed 2 billion people by myself. How can we help the world in this condition? With so much of the world's population in such lamentable condition, what should I do as an individual? How should our church or your church respond? A few things, pointers, that I've done in my own ministry throughout the years and continue to do. First, Christians should respond to global poverty and hunger with compassion. Now, that sounds obvious, but and a bit naive, but I am sure that most of us are aware that many do not respond with compassion, choosing instead to vilify. They are poor because they are irresponsible and lazy. Some choose to condemn. They hear us undocumented, legally. Why should I be troubled with their needs? And some with demonizing them. Part of an evil religion, religious group. So we should not respond in that way, but rather having true compassion for the needy, as modeled by Jesus. In Mark 8:2, in the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, it says, Jesus says, I have compassion, for they look a little hungry. And we don't provide for them, right? It's compassion. He responds in compassion. Means that we are aware of the need, we care about the people involved, and we are ready to act on their behalf. Having compassion on a needy brother or sister is proof of the love of God within us. 1 John 3. We honor God when we are kind to the needy. Proverbs 14 reminds us, right? That we honor God. How many of us would willingly choose not to honor God when we're indicated so? So that's number one. Number two, Christians should respond to global poverty and hunger with action. Not only compassion, but also action. Of course, prayer for those in need is something every Christian should and can do. Beyond that, Christians should do all they can to alleviate the suffering caused by global poverty and hunger. Jesus said, sell your possessions and give to the poor. Again, another one of those statements that when I read it, I say, Jesus, you can't be serious. Sell everything I have and give it to the poor? Like, another said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now that is another troubling statement. That's rather troubling. Like Tabitha in Acts 9, we should always be doing good and helping the poor. Notice again that constant reminder. The believer who selflessly gives to the poor will be blessed by God. Proverbs 19. He who is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward him for what he has done. Now that is another one of those statements that, can you imagine getting a phone call from God? Can I borrow $10? Okay. Let's give it to the poor. I mean, that's, again, as a pastor, that's how I personalize a lot of these things. That's how you have to personalize it for the people. When you see someone in need asking you for food, is God sending you a text message? Say, how about $5 that I buy lunch? Now, obviously, you know the answer to that, right? And then it's like lending to God. Of course, it is an investment in eternity. That is, of course, the dishonest steward passage that I referred to, Luke 16, that's precisely the point. That the rich man, the dishonest steward, uses the money to ensure himself of a future investment in payback. Whereas the rich man in the second parable doesn't care about investing for his future. He cares for the here and now. This is for my good. There are several Christian relief organizations that work not only to combat global poverty and hunger, but also to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Of course, Compassion International, World Relief, World Vision, and many others strive to meet the needs of the total person, both physical and spiritual, and we should respond in action. So first, compassion. Second, action. Thirdly, we should respond to global poverty and hunger with hope. Far too often, what we see is a lot of dejection. People say it is hopeless. There are over 2.5 billion people in abject poverty around the world. We cannot possibly feed them all. And then, of course, we even quote Jesus. The poor you will always have with you. So therefore, we should just let them be poor. Because Jesus said, no. We should respond with hope that we can do something about it. I know that the Lord secures justice for the poor and upholds the cause of the needy. Psalm 140. Believers labor with the hope that Jesus will return, and with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. Isaiah 11. Until that day of ultimate equity, Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. That being the case, we have limited opportunities and the urgent obligation to serve the Lord by serving others. I do believe that statement, the poor you will have with you, is for us to know that we have always an opportunity to show compassion and action, and then with hope. Now, fourthly, Christians should respond to global poverty by pursuing solutions that are systemic, that is, that get to the root causes rather than simply treating the symptoms. I think far too often we are all too happy to feed the people here and now rather than look for solutions. And that's unfortunately very common. And there are two things I want to talk to you about for the next couple of minutes. One is contextualizing your theology and also community development. First, about contextual theology. That involves, one, listening to the stories of others. When I was a pastor in New York City in Washington Heights, at that time, this is the 1980s and 90s, arguably one of the toughest neighborhoods in Manhattan. And abject poverty everywhere, with half the population undocumented. So, all kinds of issues. This is back in the 80s, so that's not a recent problem we've been having in this country. And I learned that the first thing you need to do is listen to the stories of others. See, far too often, we as men and women of faith try to control the agenda by setting forth the tone, the questions, asking the questions, or even directing the answers. No, we need to listen attentively to the stories of others. This implies that we do not control the agenda, we do not set the parameters of the conversation, we do not steer them away from this or that issue. Active listening demands that we pay attention to what is being said without judgment on my part, without assessment, without even the desire to seek an answer, although that is obviously the ultimate goal. So first, we listen. Secondly, we reflect on the issues that are raised out of these listening sessions. As we hear the stories and reflections that are given to us, we listen for what the real issues are behind this, what form the foundation, the basis for the poverty that confronts us. And we can see that the poverty is more systemic than we actually realize. And thirdly, a new vision emerges as to our response should be. In other words, listen to the stories, formulate what are the common issues that tie these stories together, and then seek a unified vision. I never would encourage you to go in with a plan of how to solve the poverty issues of your community. No, the community itself needs to develop that. Which brings me to the second thing, community development. I grew up as a political activist, actually. I came to this country when I was 12, learned English quickly, and so I was somewhat radical. One of my best friends growing up, I was sharing with these two young men about one of my best friends who grew up from 12 years old till today, we're still friends, and he worked for the FBI. And he tells me, they have a file on me from those days back when I was 18 or 20. Because I'm a community organizer. It was far too radical. Far too often, evangelical Christians are satisfied with providing relief to to the needy world. Soup kitchens, homeless shelters, sponsoring a child here or there. All of these are necessary, and we must not stop them, but we have to agree that these are stopgap measures. We must endeavor to enable the poor among us to rise from their plight and to provide for themselves. This, of course, involves justice. How can we make a more equitable and just world in which all people have access to not only the basic necessities of life, but access to a better future? That is the theme that we hear among us today. We don't want simply subside. We want a good, bright future for us and for our children. When we talk about the difference between rich nations and poor nations, for example, you could say, rich nations are concerned with, today, conservation. Right? How can we conserve natural resources, renewable energy, etc. Whereas the rest of the world said, how about if you share what you have with us? Yeah, you notice? We set the tone, right? So we set the tone of the conversation. So again, how can we make a more equitable world? Now that is challenging. Obviously, and that involves social justice that I'm not going to go into at great length the rest of this conversation. But we need to look at solutions. Community development involves us getting engaged in the community and finding ways to enable the people themselves to find answers and own the solution. That I simply am not going to go there as one promising their better future, but rather that together we work towards making a better society. So, as we approach this HO problem of the poor among us, I too recognize readily Jesus' admonition that we will always have the poor among us, and I am reminded of the words of a Latin American pastor as he reflected in a sermon about his own pilgrimage and how the world around him reacted to his decision to seek long-lasting solutions in community development. When I feed the poor, and I quote, when I feed the poor, I am called a saint. When I ask, why are there so many poor among us, I was called a socialist and a troublemaker. End quote. Saint or socialist? Are these two labels really incompatible? I mean, again, you may disagree, but it is challenging. We would, again, in a political climate today, right? Bernie Sanders is labeled as socialist, and therefore, obviously, not a Christian. And Ted Cruz is a Christian because, of course, he just wants to bomb ISIS. Right? Yeah, you see about the issues that they're not simple, by the way. I'm teasing you purposely, so there are no easy solutions. So, I too agree with this pastor. Because when I did work among the poor, the church was doing a great job in Washington Heights. When we started doing demonstration about shooting on our young men in the 1990s, we were troublemakers. So, how do we react? I think we know the answer. We just need to have the courage to be like Jesus. Now I'll leave some questions. That's my pre-presentation. I already took too long. No question, that's even better. See you later. Yes, go ahead.
What would be your advice in the context of the church?
Thank you. I'm thinking, and so many times in the local church, we see a brother or sister that it's going through a rough financial time, and we want to help a person out. What's the best way to go to respond to that in a positive way without humiliating the person or making the person feel like denigrated?
It's a good question that we as pastors are going to face daily. I mean, people in need, and definitely you will say, well, when I ask for a collection for Brettles, we can help her pay her rent this week, right? I mean, that's rather demeaning publicly. But that the church will have means, in which we did in our church, to provide through the deacons, right? Without divulging the information, personal information on the people in need. But also at the same time, again, because of my commitment to community development, that we would not allow people to come repeatedly unless they were willing to come to, for some education on how to manage your budget, how to create a budget, how to manage, how to do checkbooks, all that kind of stuff that we provided, because a lot of things, for the poor especially, people who come from another country that I was dealing with in my ministry, they just do not have the facility that we do to make a budget, live by the budget, set money aside, use checkbook, everything goes by cash, and cash goes rather quickly when you have it in your pocket. Right? You just spend it without thinking. And those kind of things are there. But yeah, I would always try to avoid making people know that they are in need, although that's going to come pretty obvious to you. I also would emphasize to people that there's no shame in expressing need. Because the reason some people feel ashamed to ask is because somehow we project that. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You couldn't, you make all this money and can't provide for your own family, and that's can be great. Yes, that was a question. Okay.
Yeah, my question is about the recent refugee crisis, and that's a lot of that is about wealth and poverty. And if we open up the doors, there's a big social need coming in, and it seems, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the church, we've been living in England, and they're facing, it's even more of a pressing issue there, they're closer to it. And the church there and here kind of, I haven't really spoken with a clear voice on either side. There are people speaking out strongly, maybe more towards welcome, but that's kind of a minority. I wonder if you had thoughts about why the church seems so hesitant to kind of throw arms open and say, we should be welcoming these people in, and if you advocate for that position.
Yeah, I do have things to say. And that's always, again, it's a challenging question, because I think the church is struggling here in the United States. I'm talking about the rest of the world, it's a different matter. I couldn't speak for them. We struggle with some of the same issues that we saw in that sermon by Augustine with avarice and poverty. And we struggle with, self-protection, right? That somehow we have to preserve our children. And we have to provide for a safe haven for them. And we have to ensure our safety. And that's what we all need. We all have to agree with that. And on the other side, this welcoming the people who are in need. And we struggle with that. And unfortunately, human survival now takes precedence over somebody else's survival. The analogy I always used, my son, my oldest son, who's an environmentalist, so he gets where he's going with this, and he's always for about saving the environment. And I said, Ben, if there was one polar bear left in the world, and he was running after my granddaughter and had a shot, I said, goodbye, bear. Right? And he said, Dad, but there are 6 billion people in the world. I said, yeah, goodbye, bear. All I care is about that little one. That's my granddaughter. See, and that's the reality that we face. The need now becomes so acute that we forget what we call in ethic the greater good, right, of society. And also think that we're letting hate and fear dominate us. That's an issue, and that's a real shame. Many of you have lived in other countries where danger is prevalent, right? I mean, we ask, the shame is here in the school such as us, for example, we'll ask some of you to, for the sake of the gospel, to even go to Libya and preach the gospel, right? And you're going to be in tremendous danger, right? So we're willing to do that, but we're not willing to share the same gospel with people coming overseas, and that's a challenge. So I simplify the answer, but I do believe it without fear, and we demonize people. That's part of it as well.
So you were talking about the ideas of social activism, social reform, social justice. How do we balance that? Because I agree they're incredibly important things. How do we balance that with other biblical ideas, specifically submission to authority? Like when is a protest, or how do you, maybe a better question is, what do you use as guiding principles or rules to set that balance between what's submissive to authority and yet seeking justice?
Yeah, no, I do. You do have to keep a balance. That's why, again, I say a lot of my answers are very simplified because life is much more complex than that. First of all, I do believe that living in this particular country, I need to abide by the law and restrictions that I have as a citizen of this country. But it is precisely because I am a citizen that I can speak out. It is precisely because I am a citizen of this country and of the kingdom of God that I need to act on both citizenship with honor for both. And when one confronts the other, then we have a tough choice to make. Well, it's not so tough, to be honest, because we know, that we should stand for Christ and His kingdom. But there are instances in which it is necessary to take action that, challenges the country's laws. Again, to use the example of missions. Again, side effect, as I like to sidebar, will encourage some of you to go to Saudi Arabia and break their national laws and preach the gospel, right? We'll say that to you, but yet if you came to this country undocumented, then you broke the law, therefore you should leave. Wait a minute. Think about it, right? We're asking you to go to Saudi Arabia, break their national law, which I agree, right? Preach the gospel, but then you cannot break our national law. As if somehow our nation is a little more blessed, should I say? I don't know. It's a good question. But yeah, I think that there's a time when we have to challenge the law when we feel that law is unjust. We do that in regards to abortion, right? I mean, we protest and we block clinics and we encourage our country not to fund certain institutions because of their abortion practices, right? So that's a way of going against what the law, because it is legal in this country, I hate to say it is as of right now. So we go against it. It's just when you have other measures that you need to be a little more challenging. Take something that is quote legal in this country, called weapon poverty. It is legal, right, for to take an organization for Apple computers to have over $200 billion in safe havens around the world, because they don't have to pay taxes in this country, right? That's legal. Is that right? Well, is that just? Right? Is it just if I happen to be a billionaire, have $10 billion, that I keep 5 of them in Cayman Islands, that I don't have to pay taxes, but I'm safely living in this country? But again, it's legal, but is that just? See, again, it's this question that do you really need $5 billion in the bank to live for the rest of your life? $1 billion will be enough, I would say, right? You can do it. The organization do it. See, it is challenged. So I do agree that there's a time when we have to challenge the laws. If that was not the case, we'd still have Jim Crow laws in this country, or slavery, even further back, or women's right to vote, right? All those things were dead set in our culture, and people revolted against it and managed to get a return. There's always to go with that. Yes, Marcus.
Thank you, Padilla, for speaking to us today. My question is, some of my friends here are going back to rural areas of America where there's inherent poverty. How can they correctly teach or preach and live within that, where they're not in the inner city, so they're kind of the people they get forgotten in the rural areas? How can we speak into that?
Yeah. Again, we do forget when we talk about the world's poor, we forget that we have some very poor people in our country, and that they're not all in the inner city. Like you mentioned, there are rural parts of America where it is extreme poverty, and there's where you see a lot more a sense of hopelessness, because it is, they're spread out. They don't have the say, media outlets that some of the inner city poor have to make their views known. And I think that as pastors, we need to instill a sense of hope, that it is not a crime to be poor, first of all. But again, one of the things about the gospel is, begin with the poor because it gives them a sense of you have value before God. That's obviously tremendously important. But to get to the issue of their systemic poverty, is that we need to, again, do the same things for community development. How can they gather together and seek ways to find solutions for themselves? Whether it is a farming community, never lived out in the country, so here I'm speaking strictly theoretical, right? To see how can we join our resources, that our farming community can be better able to produce and sell, in a way that is profitable to all and gives you buying power. Also a sense of voting. Again, in Washington Heights, the biggest issue for us with the poverty was that politicians know only 20% of the population in that part of the city voted in elections. What do you think, government officials are going to do when it's time to decide where trash is going to be picked up? They're going to do where 80% of the people vote. You have to have those, again, in community organizing, why voting registration rights is a big plus. You really have to push to get people to register, in order to register to vote, but to actually vote, to get involved, to get engaged in dictating who is going to rule us. And also to not listen to the demonizing people around them that says you are nothing. And, that's, again, in our country, that's why we have a lot of people who are siding with indesirable candidates because they see, themselves, they've been victimized for ages as being poor white people, especially. And so they, gravitate towards one or two candidates because they somehow say, we're going to elevate you back to the glory days of when you were back then. And that's, again, I don't want to go into the past, but we have to look towards the future. See, I'm always future-oriented. I hate for us to be living in the past. I get very, very uneasy when somebody tells me about, bring back the greatness of America.
Yeah.
Well, what, 1840? Yeah. Where would you be in 1840 America, Marcus?
Not here.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
1950, where are the ladies among us? Where would they be right now? You see, listen, make America great again. Well, yeah, I think America has some greatness, but it's not that carte blanche, right? Everything included. No, there's got to be some. I'm future-oriented. Far too future-oriented. Any other questions? But by the way, I see this also playing out in the church. I travel a lot in Latin America especially, and I see the church and this statement. I meant to say it, I have a few minutes, I'll mention it. Blessed are you who are poor. Let's take, as an example, the fate of the United Methodist Church in the United States. Right? They lose about 40,000 members a year. Every single was Presbyterians, right? In Cuba, they plant 500 churches a year. In a country that it is illegal to plant churches, right? And where the pastors are not paid. They're not paid. They live strictly on donations, right? Because again, it's a socialist country. The government is the one who pays everybody. So they don't get, I met a young doctor. Remember, we met when we were there with us. A young physician who couldn't practice medicine because he decided to be a pastor. Goes from that, and yet you have this vibrant church. And then when I see that, blessed are you who are poor. See, again, we see that. And I look at it and say, why can't we Methodists in the United States, that I'm not Methodist, allow them from Cuba to come here and teach us how to do church? So we listen to that. So we got to talk about the listening part. Listen to their stories. Rather than me going there and telling them how they ought to be church. And that in exchange enriches us to know that we have to embrace the poverty that is the gospel. But there's not another question.